Hello, everyone. I'm Cassandra Michael, trauma informed therapist and founder of Heal Anxious Attachment, the Hub, the number one global platform for anyone ready to break anxious patterns and build secure, healthy relationships. Inside the Hub, you'll find vetted therapists, holistic courses, free tools, expert interviews, and all the resources you need to shift from anxious to secure and truly thrive in your relationships. And today we have with us Valerie Rubin. Hi, Valerie. How are you doing?
Hi, Cassandra. I'm doing really well. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. I'm really happy to be here.
Amazing. So, Valerie is an anxious attachment specialist and trauma informed somatic coach. Valerie specializes in helping women heal anxious attachment and fear of abandonment at the nervous system level so they can finally stop chasing emotionally unavailable partners. Through somatic therapy and nervous system regulation, she supports women in building healthy, secure relationships rooted in safety and self trust.
Mhm.
We'll be talking about why you're attracted to emotionally unavailable partners and how to break the pattern. So let's begin. Valerie, tell me, how do we spot somebody emotionally unavailable?
Yeah, so emotional unavailability isn't about being bad at feelings. It's about someone's capacity for closeness, for emotional intimacy. And so some signs that you might spot is difficulty naming or tolerating emotions, especially, vulnerability, sharing, hey, I'm anxious, I'm sad, I'm upset, inconsistency between words and actions. They're saying they're going to do one thing, they do another. They avoid deeper conversations or deflect when, conversations get too deep, too vulnerable, or more real. They keep you up at arm's length when closeness is increasing, and then they prioritize their independence to the point where their connection to you, to them, feels very threatening. And so it's all about their ability to be with their emotional experience. And if someone is avoiding or suppressing or running away from their feelings, they're definitely going to not have the capacity to be with yours. And this can be a spectrum, right? Like some people have protector parts that block them from intimacy, block them from closeness, block them from feeling their feelings because in their past it was too overwhelming. So that would be how I would spot someone emotionally unavailable.
I love that explanation. And tell me, is there a difference between emotional unavailability and avoidant attachment?
Yes, but they typically like overlap. So avoidant attachment, right? Avoidant attachment at the root of it is a child whose emotional needs were not met or completely neglected. So they learned I need to suppress my emotional world in order to stay safe. So of course, someone who's more anxious leaning or anxiously attached, who has big feelings, who um, is very anxious, that's going to feel a lot to them. And so that's rooted in those early relational experiences. Emotional unavailability, though, that is a behavioral pattern. Someone can have avoidant attachment and still be emotionally available if they have been doing the work. And they're leaning more towards a secure way of relating and being. Um, but emotional unavailability without classic avoidant attachment looks like, maybe they are struggling with depression at the moment. If you're a mom listening to this, maybe you're going through postpartum depression, right? And that's making you emotionally unavailable, or a fear of commitment, and then addiction, right? Those are all ways that can show up as emotional unavailability, but typically people who are avoidant leaning or avoidantly attached also are emotionally unavailable. So they really go hand in hand. I
Hmm.
think the important question here is what are they doing to increase their capacity to be with their emotions? Are they doing, um, are they open and willing to doing the work? Are they starting to build capacity to be with closeness? Because with anxiously attached people, they can lean more towards codependency, meaning, I'm safe when my partner is safe. I am only safe when I'm in connection versus avoidantly attached people are I'm only safe when I'm independent, when I am alone. And so the avoidant leaning person, their journey to secure attachment is building their capacity for closeness. And then anxious leaning slash anxiously attached people, their journey to secure relating is learning how to co-regulate in safety and to build capacity to be with their own internal world as well.
Hmm. Gotcha. And so do we sometimes see, like I see this from my clients often, that they might be in relationships and their partners might be committed to them, but their partners are very closed off and maybe, they can't access, like you said, these deeper emotions. So do we often see emotionally unavailable people in long-term relationships? And that can be quite confusing because we're like, oh, but they can commit. Can they still be emotionally unavailable?
Oh, yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely they can. I mean, like many narcissists or many people who are avoidant have long term relationships. Does that mean that they're healthy and secure? No. I mean, because think about it. If you are not open about your emotions, if you don't have the capacity to be with your emotions, you're likely to lash out at your partner. You're likely not going to listen to your partner's concerns, worries, fears. You're going to invalidate them. So, yes, someone might be in a long term relationship with someone emotionally unavailable, but typically someone is very anxiously attached in those types of dynamics because they don't feel safe on their own. So, and if their fear of abandonment is bigger than the pain of staying in that relationship, the abandonment wound is always going to win. So that's how these relationships can be longer term. Like my parents, for example, are very codependent and in a trauma bonded relationship, and they've been married for 36 plus years. And so, I think it all depends, like, what are your wounds and are your protector parts and wounds complementing each other as well? Like, is the trauma almost compatible? Like, both of you are each feeding each other's wounds in different ways.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
It does, yeah, totally. Yeah, that was a really good explanation. And I'm curious, why do you think anxiously attached individuals are often drawn to emotionally unavailable partners?
Yeah, so I'm going to say in many ways. So the first thing is we have to look at what has been our familiar. So typically, people who are anxiously attached, their core pattern is my parents are inconsistently meeting my needs. So maybe one day they're hot, the next day they're cold. One day they're there for you, they're kind to you, the next day they're pulling away, right? So, or they're inconsistently meeting your needs. Then the child begins to be hypervigilant and anxious, right? Because they don't know when they're going to get their needs met. Of course, anyone would feel that way. And so that causes us anxious templating. So, because they've had emotionally unavailable parent or parents, now that becomes their nervous system's baseline as familiar. This is where my nervous system believes is safe. So we have something called neuroception. Neuroception is like our unconscious database of our nervous system saying this is safe, this is not. So a lot of clients will tell me the toxic, trauma bond that is magnetizing. They have this craving for them. They have this pull. This person feels drawn to them. That's their neuroception going off. That's their neuroception saying this is safe, right? And then the other flip coin is when a healthy, secure person may come into their life, they might find them extremely boring or the safe option, is what I've heard women say. And so then they're never actually like drawn to healthy partners because of this neuroception. So our nervous system is looking to put an ending onto our childhood trauma. So it's saying, okay, if I am with this emotionally unavailable person and they finally love me, this unconsciously means this is putting an end to my childhood story of my dad was an addict and he wasn't there for me. And we unconsciously, as a child, make up these internal narratives because we're meaning making machines. When we're young, we don't have access to logic. We can't understand, hey, my dad is going through a really difficult time, or hey, my dad's a narcissist, or hey, my dad's emotionally unavailable because of his childhood. We just think they're not there for me or they're working because I'm not good enough. And so then we look into our dating experiences and our neuroception is trying to find that familiar. So this is why we are drawn to emotionally unavailable partners or avoidant leaning partners if you're anxiously attached.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And if somebody wants to break that pattern, how can they go about doing that?
Yeah, so there's multiple steps here. I'll just start off by saying if you're just starting with talk therapy, that's not going to do shit for healing your anxious attachment style. I'm just going to say that. It's a great beginner step, but we also it's a nervous system pattern. Neuroception is unconscious. We can know, hey, this partner is not good for me. This partner is not healthy for me, but our body is still pulled toward the familiar. So I would say there are multiple steps here. We are also attracted to that emotionally unavailable partner because that inconsistency is very addictive. So that brings in something called intermittent reinforcement. It's you become physiologically addicted to this emotionally unavailable person. You're waiting for that next dopamine hit. You're waiting for them to text you back. You're waiting for them to welcome you in open arms with a hug after they've pulled away all day. And so because of this intermittent reinforcement, it's so hard to let this person go. So what we want to start to do is is nervous system regulation is we want to make sure that our nervous system is reattuning to safety. Because if you've had emotionally unavailable caregivers, you most likely never really felt consistent safety. So we need to start bringing that in. So when we have this intermittent reinforcement, our nervous system is going crazy with these highs and lows. So what we want to start is something called vagus toning. So, what happens when we're in these types of relationships, or if you've experienced chronic stress or trauma, we have something called our vagus nerve. And our vagus nerve controls whether or not we are in fight or flight. And so that creates that hypervigilance, that chronic anxiety. But when we stimulate this vagus nerve, it sends safety signals down through our body because we have this nervous system like science of it's 80% of our signals are of our body are going to our brain. So when we're stimulating this vagus nerve, that's what's going to calm our nervous system. So that's the first step. Then that's starting to encode my safety is within me and I'm not looking for someone else to depend on to meet those emotional needs for safety. Because really that's what it is. We're looking for safety through another person. That's what codependency is. And so that is the first step. The second step, again, I mentioned, is nervous system regulation. So we have different states of the nervous system: fight, which is anger; flight, which is anxiety; freeze, which could look like depression or shutdown; and then fawning, which is codependency and people pleasing. When our nervous system is dysregulated, we have learned different ways of responding to a threat. And we need to know how to self soothe and regulate and shift out of each of these nervous system states. And each nervous system state will respond best to different nervous system and somatic tools. So that's what I also teach my clients one on one. is how to actually do that. This makes you very powerful because now you are becoming the drug that you're looking for, not to that emotionally unavailable person. So that's the second step. The third step is somatic therapy. So one of the modalities I specialize in is brain spotting. So brain spotting helps to locate where our trauma memories are stored and helps to process them and release them through the body, right? Like I've been saying this whole podcast, we cannot think our way into a healthy partner. We cannot think our way out of an anxious response. So we need to heal that origin of that fear of abandonment, of that chronic anxiety, of that hypervigilant child. And we need to do that through our subcortical brain, through the nervous system. And so somatic therapy allows us to do that. So that's the third step. Fourth step is rewiring our templating, our subconscious reprogramming. We have been used to emotionally unavailable partners. So after we've done those three steps, we want to start to go out into the world and have disconfirming experiences, which are okay, a confirming experience would be I'm going to end up in another toxic relationship with someone emotionally unavailable. A disconfirming experience is um, having your needs being reflected to, mirrored, met, attuned to, right? This could even start with a coach, a therapist, a safe friend, a group container. We need to have those safe experiences. And then that will become your baseline because our self-esteem is learned. We first start to learn how to self-soothe by co-regulation. So by having those safe containers is when we can start that. And then also going back to the subconscious reprogramming, we need to teach our body that it's safe to experience love. We need to start to melt the walls around our heart. We need to start to dissolve those fears of intimacy and work on those protectors that stop us from being intimate. And
Mhm.
then getting our body used to gratitude, love, authenticity, right? So you need to have all those steps because if you don't have all those steps, it will backfire. You will continuously attract someone emotionally unavailable or avoidant leaning. And another thing that I also did not mention, that's more in the beginning, is adult self anchoring. So when you're anxiously attached and you're codependent, it's because you never had that securely attached adult. And so people who are anxiously attached miss that. And then they think my safety is out there. So when we're doing adult self anchoring, that's bringing back, hey, my safety is in here. I can be that internal attachment, safe attachment. And so this can start with, I'll even have clients bring in, okay, what has been a time in your life that you have felt capable or proud of yourself? And if you are a trauma survivor, none might come up, and that's perfectly okay. And so, what we want to start is even just thinking of a mountain or a tree. Can you tune into the steadiness, the groundedness of the mountain, of the tree? And then, as you're doing that, realizing I'm the one feeling that. And then going into physiological shifts from there. You know, when we're feeling anxious, when we're feeling shut down, we're tight, we're hunched, we're becoming small. And so when we're doing adult self anchoring, I will encourage clients to strengthen your spine when you're thinking of this capable memory. What's happening with your posture? Usually, what's happening is they're straightening their spine, even 1%. Can you open your chest? Even 1% more. Can you even just notice that difference? And so now we're becoming that securely attached parent. So we need to have all of these aspects to actually heal anxious attachment and stop that pattern of
Mhm.
being with emotionally unavailable partners. Because if I'm
Yeah.
emotionally available to myself, I'm creating that secure attachment. I
Mhm.
won't be looking for that externally.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you mentioned something around fear of intimacy, right? And sort of
Mhm.
melting the walls around the heart. And I think a lot of anxiously attached people, because they desire love and relationships so much, they don't really notice maybe those walls. And they say, I'm ready for love. I'm open. My heart is open. But do you think that's not really the case?
Typically not. And here's the thing, this was a big pattern of mine, a fear of intimacy, and that would show up as I would fear being vulnerable. I wouldn't share, "Hey, I'm feeling this. Hey, I'm struggling with this. Hey, I'm, not actually being fully aware and fully open with my emotional experience." And then it's like no one could ever actually fully meet me or attune to me because I wasn't meeting myself there. And so I would attract these avoidant partners. But people who are anxiously attached and have fear of intimacy, they want to point the finger at someone avoidantly attached. But no, babe, it's coming from you. People who are anxiously attached are also people who, are not being vulnerable, are not sharing how they feel, are fearing conflict. So people who are anxiously attached, they will point the finger at the avoidantly attached person. And then, but at the same time, they're avoidant to their own emotions. They're not open to their internal world. And so they're avoidant to themselves. So, of course, someone is going to mirror that right back.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think it's a bit of a blind spot, right, for people with anxious tendencies. Um, so I have another question for you. What's one way someone can calm their nervous system when their partner withdraws or when someone they're dating withdraws?
Yeah, so absolutely. So, first, it is recognizing what's actually happening in my body. Is my chest getting tight? Is my throat getting constricted? And starting to pendulate. So, a lot of people who have anxious attachment or have struggled with complex trauma, what ends up happening is emotions can feel too much, too overwhelming. And so, when the partner withdraws, or even if they go on a business trip or whatever, it's going to feel really triggering. It's first noticing. Typically, this response feels big, not because this partner is actually withdrawing. When we're coming from our true adult self, no one can abandon me. Because two adults, no one can abandon you. And that's a really harsh reality to learn is when you're an adult, no one can abandon you. Someone can abandon a child, but no one can abandon an adult. And so when we can learn to meet our needs emotionally and self-soothe and come into back into our adult self with that adult anchoring, that's going to be very helpful. And so when we're having going back to what I said, when we're having that big response, something to be notice of is anytime I'm reacting to something in a very big, quote unquote, big way, it's coming from a young part. Because when we're in our true adult self, we feel capable, we feel like things are possible, things can change. When we're in our inner child or blended with young parts, we're starting to flood. We're starting to cry. We're starting to have a panic attack because our partner is going on a business trip or because they haven't texted us back in 5 hours. So that's where we want to go back to the vagus toning, the adult self anchoring, and the nervous system regulation.
Hmm.
And one powerful thing is also EFT tapping. So EFT tapping, it's really like, how can I stay with this feeling? What if I can be here? What if it's safe to feel this? What if it's okay to feel this? And we're starting to build our capacity to be with those intense feelings and start to unblend from that young part. So we can notice, hey, I'm blended when it feels really big. And even just noticing and externalizing this part that's freaking out and panicked. Okay, if I were to see this part outside of me, what color would it look like? What shape would it look like? For me, a lot of the time, that has looked like my inner child crying in the corner, looking for my mom. It's
Hmm.
like, "Oh, this is coming from my 4-year-old part, not
Yeah,
my 40-year-old self."
that makes sense. Yeah, I love all of those tools. I use them too with my clients.
Mhm,
And so you said, as an adult, no one can abandon us. What do you mean
mhm.
exactly?
Literally that. No one can abandon you when you are an adult. When you are an adult, you are the person that will be meeting your own needs. But when we're a child, we're fully dependent on our caregivers. And so, yes, people can leave, but no one can actually abandon you because
Mm.
we're an adult now. And that might be, and I remember hearing that for the first time and feeling so triggered, so activated by that, but it is the truth. When we're in our adult self, someone can leave, and yes, it can hurt, but we can still be okay.
Mhm. Yeah, whereas as, for if we look at it in terms of, when you're a child, abandonment usually means loss of safety and maybe even death,
Yes,
right? So that's a big.
exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly what I was going to say. Because when we're an infant, we are entirely dependent on our caregivers for survival. So
Mhm.
if my parent leaves, that means I will die. And so a lot of my clients will have this pre-verbal attachment trauma, this templating that says,
Yeah.
if they leave, I will die.
Mhm.
If they leave, my survival goes out the window. That's not coming from your 30 or 40-year-old self. That's coming from that young part. And that does not respond to words. You can't think your way out of a pre-verbal response when your attachment trauma is activated, because it's all
Mhm.
through sensations and emotions. When we're from that 0 to 3 years old and you've experienced trauma, and this could look like your parents, like your mom having postpartum anxiety or postpartum depression, like they aren't able to attune to you. Or a lot of parents have learned the cried out method, right? A baby cannot self soothe. And so the cried out method, people are like, oh, well, my baby stopped crying. It's because they're shut down. And so
Mhm.
these are all like very small ways that attachment trauma can happen. And even between 0 to 6 months of age, the baby believes that they are not separate beings, separate human from their mother. They believe they are the same person. So even like if a mother is like in surgery or they went in surgery or they had to go in the NICU because their mother had birth trauma, right? Um, or even like if their mother went away on a trip in that first 6 months, the baby does not cognitively understand where the mother went. So these
Mhm.
are all ways that preverbal trauma can occur. And
Yeah.
so that's way when your partner pulls away, it can feel so big, so massive, and it can feel like you're going to die. And it's not coming from here. We know, hey,
Mhm.
my partner is, just busy at work, but that's not what our body is saying. And this is why somatic therapy is so key so that we can heal that templating. We can heal that origin of that preverbal wound and start to reparent those parts.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. Somatic work is super important. And yeah, just incorporating mind, body, and soul, right?
Hmm.
Just having a holistic approach to healing. I think that's
Hmm.
super beneficial and needed to move the needle, actually.
Yeah.
Um, and so, how can we go about healing this abandonment wound that we might have? So, maybe you can just mention like one thing that would make the most impact. What could our listeners focus on if they're wanting to heal their abandonment wounds?
So I know you said one, but there are going to be multiple things, right?
Hmm.
I'll say a small thing that we can start with to heal our abandonment wound is starting to listen to our internal cues. Because when we're anxiously attached, we're very hyper focused on other and neglecting our own needs. So even starting at like when I need to go to the bathroom, I'm going to go to the bathroom. When I'm hungry, I'm going to eat. When, when I'm starting to feel dysregulated, I can self soothe and start to actually feel that emotion, right? So these are all ways when we can start to learn how to take care of ourselves physically, emotionally, physiologically. We start to meet those needs. Then the fear of abandonment becomes smaller because our inner child learns to trust that we will meet our own
Hmm.
needs. And
Yeah.
so that would be the first step.
Hmm.
Um,
So,
and then
meeting
yeah,
our needs. Hmm.
yeah, and then just the second part, kind of going what we said earlier, is that somatic therapy
Hmm.
is healing the origin of that fear of abandonment. and
Hmm.
witnessing this is just young parts. Like, of course, this would come up for you.
Yeah. And just going back and doing maybe some inner child work or noticing where it is in the body where we're holding the trauma, being with it,
Yes.
allowing it to, yeah, to
Yes.
process, to dissipate. Hmm.
Yes, and we need to make sure that we're doing that when we're in our adult self. So a lot of and this was like a problem with me that I even did with my own clients is I did not do adult self anchoring with them. And then it's like, okay, we're blended, we're flooded, we're crying, and that's great to cry, but we're blended with the young part. We are merged with the young part. We feel like we're that 4-year-old. So when we're
Hmm.
doing inner child work, it's like a 8-year-old trying to soothe a 4-year-old. It's not. We need that adult self presence. So even just starting my sessions with clients, we start with that adult self anchoring to make sure that they can be there for that inner child,
Hmm.
because when we're flooded or blended with a young part, we're also abandoning that part because we are not that adult self reparenting.
Yeah. And so the adult self anchoring, that's basically the embodiment of, let's say, the sovereign self, the powerful, healed self. Or how would you describe that adult anchoring again? Hmm.
Yeah, so really how we can notice is we feel capable. We feel like, and that's where the recalling of the memories of feeling capable, feeling proud of yourself, and or either doing that or doing the imagining that mountain, feeling that, embodying that in your body, noticing those physiological shifts with the straightening of the spine. And that's going to change your physiology to feel like
Hmm.
I am that adult self. I can be there for this young part. So that's really what that adult self looks like. Is I feel my biological age, right? I'm 30. I feel like I'm 30. I feel like I
And
can be present and not
yeah.
flooded by my emotions.
And are there ways that we can reinforce this on a daily basis?
Yes, doing exactly the practices that I mentioned, and I have a free masterclass that really literally goes in depth into each step that I went into today.
Hmm.
So I go over how to do adult self anchoring through a guided practice. And then I also have an EFT tapping for the fear of abandonment and reparenting the inner child. And then we also literally do somatic therapy and brain spotting to heal that pull toward the emotionally unavailable partner in my masterclass. That's completely free, which is insane that it's free
Hmm.
um, for the value and transformation that it brings.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Just as we wrap up, I have one more question. We spoke a lot about the internal shifts that have to happen, right? Like what we can heal, our abandonment wounds, anchoring in the adult self, shifting, processing trauma, and so on. Um, Can you mention something a bit more practical for those listening who are out there dating right now? So, how can I firstly spot emotionally unavailable or avoidant people as soon as possible? And secondly, how can I start feeling more attracted to secure partners and stop viewing them as boring?
Yeah, so none of this is practical. All like really we need all of these steps that I mentioned here, or else we will our nervous system likes the familiar, so we need to practice those steps. But I would say even just small practical ways on a date is how do they describe their feelings? Like if you date men, for example, how do they respond to your boundaries? Are they respectful of your boundaries, of your no? What do they think about commitment? Um, because this is a way to vet out people is if you're looking for that emotionally available, secure partner, what are your intentions? What are you looking for before you meet on a date? Usually they will say, I'm looking for something casual or I'm looking for a relationship. That's one good way to vet. And then also, I mean, for me, it's a dead giveaway. People like will ask, okay, what do you do? I will say what I do. And People will usually say how therapy has like really improved their life, has really helped them. Or a red flag is they might say they've never needed therapy. That's a huge giveaway. Huge. You could literally just start to share, you know, you could just talk about it very casually about therapy or emotions or something of that nature. And usually people will tell on themselves, what they think about it. So, like, those are big things that you can do to spot them. How do they respond to, um, how do they respond to your needs, right? Like if you're saying like if you have a food allergy, like I have a sensitivity to gluten, like are they making sure that, a place has gluten-free food? Like all of these are small ways. These are like first date ways to kind of weed them out. Um yeah, those are some ways to weed them out. It's also like, how do they describe their emotions? Do they say, "Oh, I struggle with emotions. I feel like I'm weak." That's a big tell. So those are some ways in dating. And it's like you can say, "I want a relationship," but also going back to your actions. What are your actions when you're dating? When they say, "I just want sex," do you 'cause it are protector parts of yours flaring that say, "He's gonna change, I can change him because 'cause I'm so amazing, da 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 da," or are you like, "He just wants sex, I'm gonna stop it there. I'm not gonna
Mhm.
go on another date."
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you for that. Also, sometimes in today's dating culture, some men might say, I'm looking for something serious, and then actually they're not. There's also other layers to this. But yeah, I really loved what you shared. And so, as we wrap up this talk, what piece of advice would you give to women who consistently choose or attract emotionally unavailable or avoidant partners? That they're feeling, a bit jaded, they've done some healing work, they put themselves out there, but they're still encountering the same pattern. Do you have just like a little bit of advice? What would you tell them?
To look inward. What parts of me are emotionally unavailable?
Mhm.
What parts of me feel safer not being intimate? What parts of me feel safer to be closed off? What is this protecting me from? Looking at within myself when I'm what's coming up within you when you keep consistently seeing this pattern? Is it frustration? Is it shutdown? Like, can we just be with that and validate and acknowledge that like, hey, this is exhausting being stuck in this pattern. And what are you going to do next? Is am I going to really heal my wounds? And I know you mentioned like they did healing work, but if you're still doing this in this pattern, you are definitely missing one or more of the steps that I mentioned here today.
Mm. Okay, beautiful. Well, this has been super helpful. I think there's a lot of value in this talk. Thank you so much for everything that you shared. I'll also share the link of your masterclass in the description below. Yeah, that's all. Thank you very much, Valerie. It was lovely having you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Cassandra.